We are experiencing a new phase in the church, a phase where the sacred seems to be mixing with the profane. Where sacred altars are transformed into stages. Where worship of the Creator begins to be confused with entertainment. Many look at this and call it evolution, adaptation to modern times. But is that really the case? Or are we silently witnessing the infiltration of worldliness into the Adventist church? This video is a call to reflection. Let us seriously examine the clear signs of this influence, understand what the Bible reveals on the subject, and show that, despite everything, God still has a people who remain faithful. Like, comment, subscribe, share with other brothers and sisters, and, if you wish, support our channel so that this message reaches even more people. What is worldliness? Before we point out the signs, we need to clearly understand what the Bible calls worldliness. In 1 John 2 verses 15 to 17 it is written, "Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father but from the world." And in Romans 12 verse 2, the appeal is direct. "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will." Worldliness, therefore, is not just a matter of appearance or style. It is a spirit, a mindset, that seeks to quietly infiltrate the spiritual life, replacing God's principles with the values of the world. It manifests itself when we seek to please the public more than God. When our decisions are guided by cultural trends rather than the Word. When what attracts us is no longer holiness, but popularity. And this does not only affect individuals. It affects entire churches, which begin to exchange the cross for the stage, truth for entertainment, reverence for distraction. Worldliness is, in essence, a silent enemy. And like any disguised enemy, it never knocks on the door announcing its intentions. It infiltrates, subtly, until it dominates. The Adventist Church has always been against worldliness. From its earliest days, the Seventh-day Adventist Church has taken a clear stand against any alliance with the spirit of the world. The pioneers understood that following Christ meant swimming against the tide of the dominant culture. Ellen White wrote strongly on this subject. In Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, she stated, "We must not conform to the fashions of the world, but live as a peculiar people, zealous for good works." The concept of peculiarity has always been central to Adventist identity. A separate, distinct people, called to reflect God's holiness in every aspect of life, in dress, speech, thought, and worship. Separation from the world is not physical isolation, but moral and spiritual distinction. It is living in this world without belonging to it. It is being light in the darkness, not shadow in the gloom. For decades, this stance shaped music, worship, principles of conduct, and even lifestyles within the church. There was a sense of mission, of holiness, of urgency. But today, many of these values are being questioned, or simply set aside. The question that arises is, are we abandoning what made us a peculiar people? Visible signs of worldliness today. Unfortunately, many signs show that worldliness is no longer a distant threat, but has become a visible reality in many Adventist communities. The first sign is the change in worship styles. In the name of making worship more attractive, stages with colored lights, applause, thunderous drums, and theatrical performances have emerged. Instead of reverent worship, what we see are actual shows, where the focus is often not on God, but on the performance. Songs that imitate worldly standards gain ground, while deeply theological and spiritual hymns are left aside. Reverence gives way to momentary excitement, and holiness is replaced by sensations. Another worrying sign is the normalization of secular behavior, both among members and leaders. Worldly values about success, appearance, consumption, and vanity are absorbed without question. What was once seen as dangerous is now accepted as culturally normal. Self-promotion on social media has become commonplace. Pastors, leaders, and spiritual influencers compete for likes and followers as if they were on a reality show. Personal exposure often overshadows the message of the gospel. Of course, it is not a matter of judging hearts, but of recognizing trends. Because worldliness never comes in through the front door. It infiltrates the details. The subtle choices. The quest for relevance at any cost. And when we are not vigilant, what begins as innovation can end in deviation. Have you noticed these signs in your local church? How has your experience been in the face of these changes? Leave your comment, we want to hear from you. The influence of postmodern culture within the church. We live in an era marked by relativism. Postmodern culture rejects absolutes, despises fixed truths, and exalts emotion above reason. Unfortunately, this mentality is finding its way into many churches, including the Adventist church. Today, error is often treated as a mere, different opinion, and sin as a phase that should not be confronted, only understood. The idea of repentance is replaced by unconditional acceptance, without transformation. Worship ceases to be an encounter with God's holiness and becomes an emotional experience, where the main goal is to feel something. This opens the door to a gospel centered on man, and no longer on Christ. In addition, the language used by some churches adopts the vocabulary of secular marketing: attractive, connected, inclusive, transformative experience. These terms may seem harmless, but they reflect an attempt to adapt the sacred to the tastes of the public, rather than calling the public to holiness. Most alarming is that, in their eagerness to appear relevant, many communities have abandoned the prophetic mission that God entrusted to His church. Instead of preparing a people for the soon return of Jesus, they seek to please the world, even if it costs them their faithfulness to the truth. The question we need to ask is simple but profound: are we trying to transform the world? Or are we being shaped by it? The real danger, it's not just aesthetic, it's spiritual. Some try to minimize the problem by saying, it's just a style of music, or it's just a new form of worship. But worldliness is never just a matter of aesthetics. The real danger is spiritual, and profound. When the world enters the church disguised as modernity, it directly affects the message being preached. The word ceases to be a sword that confronts and becomes light discourse, adapted so as not to offend. The prophetic identity of the Adventist church begins to fade. That clear voice that denounced sin, that called for repentance, that boldly proclaimed the three angelic messages, is being replaced by soft, neutral words that don't bother anyone. This process is reminiscent of the description of the church of Laodicea in Revelation 3 verses 14 to 22. A church that thinks it is rich, but is blind, poor, and naked. Lukewarm. Neither cold nor hot. And Jesus says, I am about to vomit you out of my mouth. This is the consequence of worldliness, spiritual lukewarmness. A faith without fervor. A church without power. A people who maintain the appearance of piety but deny its effectiveness. And what is most serious, many do not even realize it. Because worldliness is sneaky. It steals zeal, extinguishes reverence, distorts the truth, and all this in a subtle way, disguised as innovation, inclusion, and modernity. Therefore, the warning must be clear: what is at stake is not a style of worship, it is faithfulness to God. And if we are not vigilant, the enemy will continue to advance, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. The Bible already warned us. Nothing that is happening today took God by surprise. The Bible was clear in announcing that in the last days there would be a widespread deviation from the truth, even among those who call themselves faithful. In 2 Timothy 4 verses 3 to 4, the Apostle Paul warned, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but according to their own desires, they will heap up for themselves teachers tickling their ears, and they will turn their ears away from the truth and be turned aside to fables." These words accurately describe the reality in many places today. People no longer want to hear strong messages, calls to repentance, or appeals to holiness. Instead, they seek preachers who comfort, not confront. Who entertain, not exhort. Revelation 3 also describes a lukewarm church. A generation that thinks everything is fine, but has lost its true spiritual condition. This prophecy is a mirror for today's reality. And we must not forget that the enemy works precisely where there is light. Satan does not need to corrupt what is already lost. His target is the churches that still carry the truth. And his preferred strategy is not a frontal attack, it is subtle infiltration. In Matthew 24 verse 24, Jesus warned, "For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect." This deception does not come from outside. It arises from within. It mixes truth with error. It uses religious language, pious appearances, and even biblical references, but all of this serves one purpose, to divert God's people from their mission. That is why we cannot let our guard down. Worldliness is a fulfilled prophecy, and an urgent warning to the remnant church. Ellen White sound the alarm. Long before any of this happened, God had already used his servant to warn of the danger of becoming too close to the world. Ellen White, with prophetic clarity, sounded the alarm, and her words today seem to have been written for this very moment in history. In Evangelism, page 510, she wrote, "When music becomes the main part of worship, Satan turns what should be a blessing into a trap." And regarding worship, she warned, "There will be shouting with drums, music, and dancing. The senses of rational beings will be so confused that they cannot be trusted to make fair and right decisions." Selected Messages, Volume 2, page 36. She also spoke about the conduct of members, warning against vanity, pride, and love of fashions and appearances. In Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, page 131, she wrote, "Many who profess to be Christians are so much like the world in dress, conversation, and behavior that it is difficult to distinguish them. What is most striking is how this advice, given more than a century ago, accurately describes the scenario we see today: irreverent services, emotion-centered worship, members and leaders immersed in vanity and appearance, churches seeking acceptance rather than holiness." Ellen White did not write these things based on personal opinion. She received light from God to protect the Adventist people. Her writings were not given to be ignored or adapted to modern convenience. They were given as spiritual protection for times of crisis. Today, to ignore these warnings is to reject heaven's help. And continuing on this path can lead us away from the prophetic purpose that God has entrusted to his church. There is still hope, the faithful remnant. Despite all we have seen so far, the message does not end in lament, it ends with hope. For even in the midst of lukewarmness, worldliness, and apostasy, God always preserves a faithful remnant. There is a generation, silent but steadfast, that has not bowed to the system. Young people who reject the vanity of the world. Families who maintain worship in the home. Local churches that still preserve reverence, doctrine, and prophetic mission. While many are distracted by what is popular, there are people who continue to pray, study, serve, and proclaim that Jesus is coming back. They don't make headlines, they don't promote themselves on social media, they don't follow the crowd. But they are the knees that have not bowed to Baal. Those who, like Daniel, would rather be thrown into the pit than surrender to the world. Those who, like Elijah, remain steadfast even when they seem to be alone. These people exist. They are rising up. Silently, but with conviction. And God's promise remains. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the sky, and those who lead many to righteousness, like the stars, forever and ever. Daniel 12 verse 3. The restoration has already begun. But it needs voices, courage, and faithfulness. The call is not to accuse, it is to awaken. So that we may be part of the people who are not contaminated by the world, but remain faithful to the Lamb. Worldliness is not just an external problem or a matter of style. It is a direct attack on the essence of the church. A silent danger that corrodes faith, dilutes the message, and threatens to extinguish the light of the remnant. But the church may be under attack. God will always have a people who are not contaminated by the world. Therefore, the call is clear: watch, resist, remain faithful. We cannot accept that holiness be replaced by appearance. That reverence be exchanged for entertainment. That the prophetic mission be stifled by the desire to please the world. It is time to rise up, strengthen our faith, and restore the purity of the gospel. May each of us be a beacon in the darkness, a living sign that there is still a people set apart, holy, and dedicated to God. Time is short. Jesus is coming back. May we be found watchful. If you feel in your heart the call to be part of this faithful remnant, do not remain silent. Share this video with your brothers and sisters, leave your like to strengthen this message, and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving content that edifies and alerts. Comment below what you think about this very important topic. Your voice can awaken others. And if you want to support this work, use the link in the description to contribute and help this message reach even more people who are thirsty for the truth. Together, we can keep the flame of faith burning, resist worldliness, and prepare a people for the glorious return of Jesus. May God bless you and your family, and may He strengthen us to stand firm until the end.